My name is Vanessa Prager and I'm an artist. I grew up in LA, in Los Feliz. I was born there. I never really was an artist as a kid, which is so weird. I remember when I did draw, I drew the same things over and over. I went to a boarding school in Oregon, a really small school, and I started drawing when I was there. So I just kind of picked it up as like my loner activity. I felt like a really angsty teen, and I was just trying to like get whatever was in my head out, and that was kind of the impetus for doing art. I do try and focus on portraiture. I kind of paint it how I see it, which is filled with layers, filled with chaos, filled with a lot of different things making up the whole. So it's never just like a straight face. It's always filled with what I see in people, which is a million things make up the whole. And that's my take on the portrait. There's just a lot more to things than what you see initially, and that's kind of what I'm always looking at. I love just wasting paint, you know, and just literally piling things on. I think there's something to only adding to things and never taking away. I mean, I'm not saying I never take away paint, but really rarely do I take it away. You just keep putting it on and trying to make the best with what you've got. Everything adds up to the whole. And the more chaos there is, the more fun it is to kind of sort it out. I think people in general take messes and make them into something, and that's kind of what life is, you know? I didn't go to art school. When I started painting, I started just like studying old masters. So that was like the dialogue that I had. Later I'll find like artists that I love, of course, but like modern masters, in my opinion, like Lucian Freud and like Chuck Close. I love Cecily Brown. There's a lot of artists that are living today, but they're a little bit like older, I think. Not going to art school is interesting just because everyone goes to art school, except some people who don't. But when you don't go to art school, you're just on your own. The things that I replaced art school with are the internet, because there was tons of information available to me when I wanted to learn how to paint. Copying things, I think that's how a lot of artists learn how to paint as well. But then just learning about techniques. I learned pretty early on that people would make really bold statements, especially in painting, like never use black, things like that, these like hard and fast rules, and I realized they were contradicting each other. And so I was like, oh, whatever, like anything goes, which was really valuable for me to learn as a painter, because you're like, oh, you can do whatever you want, great. The art that I'm most interested in is like the art I feel, the art I get like chills when I'm looking at, you know? And the funny thing is I don't think that much. Like I don't think when I'm painting at all. Like I lose all sense of thought. If I had been trained to think, I don't think that would have been good. The more I think, the harder it gets. It's really interesting when people look at the work because they really do add their own histories and stories to the pieces. I think that's perfect because that's what I do to it, and it's just funny how your own past informs what you see. I think people don't always realize how much so. I just think art can cross the lines. Like you can have any different number of people see a thing and experience something like within themselves or spiritually or whatever you want to call it. It's like the opposite of thought. Like it's the opposite of dealing with the analyzation of the piece or the thinking process behind it. And sometimes it can be moving. It's very magic-eye. They don't need to see the face. I think it's just like a thing that I've stuck to because I love portraiture, and it's the same way that I see people and things around me. I'm a painter who learned how to paint on my own, and that could be a downside or it could be an upside, and I've kind of just made it into my own thing. My way of doing things is really like driven. It's like put it out there, like show things. I mean, of course I'm always trying to be a better painter, but I was never not putting that out into the world. There was no point in time where I was like, I'm gonna wait. And art is not safe. There's no set ways. I mean, there was two things when I kind of started making this work, which was one, fuck it. Like, who cares? Who cares about wasting paint? Who cares about how it looks? Who cares like what you're making? And kind of just like roll with it. But also I wanted to make something that you had to see in person because it is such an internet day and age, and their photos are everywhere, and there's a lot of flatter art and stuff these days, and a lot of them are super sculptural, like even more so than others, where it changes when you look at it at different angles. And I just liked that idea of in-person, real live thing. My process is informed by showing, so I'm going to show the work, take it all in, see if what I intended gets across or doesn't, or how it gets across, and then come back into the studio and make something else new.